Hi, everyone. I am Rejoice, and welcome to Umatta Consultant Podcast. If today's your first time on our show, please make sure you subscribe to all of our social media channels, especially Spotify. Today, we have the special privilege of speaking with Matt. Matt is the founder and principal of his company. He's also a 7 times award winner as an author and also nationally recognized as a financial wellness speaker. I would love for Matt to introduce himself as he sees fit, and we'll dive right into the questions. So, Mike, the mic is yours, please.
Thanks so much, Rejoice. It really is my pleasure and my privilege to be here, and I'm excited for our conversation today. I think money and all of the ins and outs in the workplace and beyond, really important topic. So I appreciate you and your work in this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here. So, our first question for you, you've overcome incredible challenges: addiction, homelessness, and cancer, and built a life purpose for service. How has your personal journey shaped your approach to financial education?
I've lived financial fear and anxiety personally. Being a homeless teen was challenging. I don't know how, challenging is an understatement. I moved out of my family's house and slash kicked out due to drugs and alcohol when I was about 15. So it was challenging. That's the word that I come back to. But I know not every listener can relate to that extreme, but understanding urgency as a result of those challenges in my life really drives my mission, creates my purpose. My purpose is the best of what I have to help others. And because I've gone through a lot, I bring greater empathy and resilience building to financial education and well-being. So I think that empathy, that resilience is just as important as things like budgeting and investments. And I know even
Right.
just that word budgeting can bring lots of different emotions and feelings to the surface for people. And I know that because I've lived it, I felt it, and I've helped other people through it too.
Very true. Very true. And you're right about that. Some people may not be able to relate to all your experiences, but it definitely sparks an interest to want to learn more. So,
Yeah.
Matt, you have a book called Financial Capable, friendly reminder or a guide to building whole health or wealth. What inspired you to write your book?
Yeah. So financially capable, a friendly guide to building whole health wealth was inspired after teaching for years in boardrooms, workplaces, homeless shelters, schools, and seeing that there's commonalities among people of all different social backgrounds as well as economic backgrounds. And fear and shame around money, the emotions really is strong around so many. Just because somebody makes more doesn't mean that they have everything on straight by any
Right.
stretch.
Yeah.
Because those feelings, and some is rooted even in trauma, but the financial anxiety is real at every socioeconomic class and status. Um, so I really wanted to create a guide that met that need, met people where they were, not
Mm.
just lecturing. And that's why it's a friendly guide, because there's so much more shame.
Right.
I've heard myself the advice, and as a young adult, like, oh, don't spend more than you make and you'll be all set. You'll be all right. And maybe we've all heard that. But by itself, it's not bad advice. When we spend more than we make, we get in financial trouble. However, just saying that and dropping the mic there oftentimes is a disservice because
Mm.
it kind of feels like, yeah, that's pretty basic information. That's like basic 1 + 1 is 2. And if I try to spend 3, I'm in trouble. But there's bills to pay and different responsibilities that we have and trying to buy food during inflationary times and all of the things that mount up can make me feel like I'm less than, I'm inadequate, that my financial situation is insurmountable. And I heard that story time and time again in all different industries across the board, as well as different ages and stages. So really just walking with people. There's a lot of different stories and examples that I learned from. That was really my privilege and opportunity to work with over 100,000 people, because it was a learning lesson for me. I started in credit counseling when I was 19 years old. So I left that homeless situation as a teen, seeking better things, had a huge pivotal moment, not because of me. I lacked hope, but other people really saw a better future for me and encouraged me to say, hell, sober living one is much better. And shout out Eric Jones, because he really was empathetic, persevered to get my, well, I'll save the adjectives, but crazy self out of my own way. He invited me to like a Bible-based drug recovery program, and that made all the difference. I've been sober since 1999, and being clear-minded, sober-minded, and not every listener can relate to drug addiction. One psychologist, though, has mentioned that at some point in everybody's life, up to 100% of the population has been addicted to something. And when we think about whether it's scrolling, maybe we're addicted to
Right.
TikTok or the gram.
Yes.
Maybe we're addicted to, you can fill in the blank for yourself, but obviously food and shopping, retail therapy is a common phrase that's
Mhm.
used and sometimes in joking, but I mean, for real, it's similar chemical process in the brain to a drug addiction, because we're seeking that feeling, that hopefulness, that emptiness will be filled by this action of shopping and buying stuff. And that really affects people all over the world. But I wrote the book really to blend that finance with real world healing, because true wealth isn't just money and having the biggest pile of cash, but it's really dignity, it's health, and living life with purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think your last sentence definitely sparked a huge thought in my head. You know, living with purpose and
Hmm.
dignity and health. You know, you don't appreciate your health until something happens to you,
It's true. It's
and
true.
then you realize, holy cow, you really need to be in a healthy place to do anything that you want to do in this world. Everything else becomes secondary.
Hmm.
So your health is extremely important. How did you, well, let me take you back a little bit. Before you wrote your book, who did you have in mind as your ideal reader when you were writing Financially Capable?
Yeah. So I think that creating an ideal avatar, one, was a challenge for me because I wanted to help everybody everywhere. And anybody who's done work or created programs knows that if we try to help everybody everywhere, it ends up not helping anybody, really. So when I created an ideal avatar and writing the book for the person, I really pictured a specific face. I really wanted to write to the person who felt behind, maybe drowning in debt, juggling more than they could really handle, struggling to find hope, and getting by in a difficult world. It is difficult in so many ways. And when I wrote the book, I separated it into three sections. The first section, and this is what becoming financially capable requires, and it's well researched, well documented. First, we need to understand access and opportunity. And when I say we broadly, this is a leadership issue, not just government. When I say leadership in companies, people who lead without a title, people who lead in their community, people who lead in their homes. Financial well-being and overall well-being is a leadership issue. If we're doing well, that's amazing. It really is incumbent upon us to help those around us, because by helping those around us, it helps all of us. So the financial environment in which we live, that's the first section. And that gets into rules and regulations and things that people are feeling a lot of stress about right now, particularly as we record this. Just this week, the big, beautiful bill was passed, and people are concerned about insurance and will they still be insured? For me, it being involved in the cancer world and as a patient and advocate, I see research being cut. I see people's medications being much more difficult to access. There's real world implications to the big, broad environment in which we live. One of the chapters is about prejudice and racism and how systemic racism specifically has limited access and opportunity for particular people and populations. And I wrote it not necessarily just to say, hey, look at all these problems, but to think individually. Yes, we work within a system that we don't individually have control over. However, we can do both the best that we can and
Right.
help the people near us.
Right.
Again, whether they look like us, act like us, think like us, grew up like us, or not, because we're really in this world together. One of the things that kind of gets under my skin is the idea of a self-made person. There's no such thing. I mean, biology alone means it's impossible. Like, if there weren't at least two other people involved, I wouldn't be here today. I mean, come on now. Self-made just isn't a thing.
No.
And that doesn't take away from trauma or things that people had even while they were being raised.
Right.
Through our entire journey, we need each other. I'm in Boston. I'm a Celtics fan, not to like limit any kind of people that might not be in Boston, but Doc Rivers was an amazing coach through the Celtics championship careers recently. And one of the things that he focused on with the team was the idea of Ubuntu. And it's something that, and it sounds like you're familiar with it.
Yes.
And it's powerful because it's a message that I exist because we together are. I am because you are, we are, and together as a team, and the power of that. And there's not a direct translation in English
Right.
to Ubuntu, but the idea that we're inseparable. What I
Yes.
do affects other people and vice versa. So the idea that prejudice makes us all poorer is something that I wrote in the book, and that's powerful because access and opportunity is critically important. And for those who might not be familiar or might disagree even with these past couple of minutes, it affects you, whether you realize it, know it, or not. I encourage you, read the book. It's not necessarily just my idea and opinion. It's research-based for decades, centuries. It's not new. It has changed in different ways. I suppose that kind of got excited there for a moment.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessarily the individual avatar, but the book is both written for individuals, really to help them provide hope to those who are hurting, to provide healing and an idea and a path to guide them towards whole health wealth, which is the idea that the different domains of well-being are inseparable. So that's why the first section, environmental well-being, is significant. Anybody who's lived in an apartment that has mold and
Right.
has asthma and other health concerns knows that directly our environment affects our well-being, and our environmental well-being affects our physical well-being. Our physical and environmental well-being impacts certainly our mental well-being, our emotional, as well as financial well-being. So it's really a guide to bring that to somebody, whether they're new to the workforce and graduating and trying to figure out life earlier on, whether it's a mid-career pivoter. The book really speaks to people who want skills and confidence to build a meaningful life. And I'll add the caveat, and advocate and help others to build that meaningful life as well.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said, Matt. Ubuntu resonated with me very well because we are existing because of each other. And like you mentioned, it's a community effort. If someone does this, it pulls this person up. Whatever you lack, someone else can sort of contribute. So I love your reference to that concept. So I know you support many people in variety ways, from students to executives. How does Financial Capable, building on your years of experience of working with everyone from students to executives to people facing housing insecurity? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think doing different workshops, and it's been hundreds of workshops, many different keynotes. And again, it's a joy for me, and it's fulfilling to help other people in all different situations. It's what helps me continue to learn. But doing all of the speaking has revealed the truth that tools must remain flexible. And when we think about financial tools, there's a wide range. And I think that there's a misconception out there that if you follow this one specific path that you pay a lot of money to a company for, then your life is golden. You're
Right.
all good. And well, that's just not how life works, because we get hit with unexpected medical costs, and the majority of bankruptcies have medical debt. And it's significant. We can't necessarily control that. We can think about our physical well-being and be as healthy as possible. But if I get hit by a car tomorrow, which is altogether possible and happens time and time again,
Knock on
unfortunately.
wood. Let me knock on wood.
Knock on wood. I can't fully control that. I can mitigate the risk by looking both ways before I cross the street and aware of my surroundings. However, I can't control the world in which I live.
Right.
And any control that I think I have is really a fallacy.
Very true.
And I found that directly through cancer. When I was diagnosed with cancer, it's unknown origin. It's not necessarily because of specific behaviorals, bile duct cancer. And shout out, just because I think raising awareness of different illnesses and things really is important. Get checkups. Get regular checkups for your physical health, because health is wealth, as you've probably heard, but it's also tied to all the other domains of well-being and building whole health wealth. But bile duct cancer is very, very rare. So executives in boardrooms get cancer.
Yes.
Executive in boardrooms have employees who also get sick or struggle or have financial anxiety. And when I mentioned earlier a leadership problem, when we think about executives in the workforce, it's estimated that $47 billion every week is lost in productivity to U.S. businesses as a result of financial anxiety. Financial anxiety is huge.
Yes.
And if someone's listening who is a leader of one type or another, again, there's leaders with titles, there's leaders without titles, but a leader nonetheless, the people around you are struggling, whether it's in the workforce or at home. There are people struggling to just get by, to feed their food insecurity is very real. And this is where I mentioned the tools need to be flexible, because the tool for an executive with a 6 or 7 figure salary is a different tool than someone who is scraping by receiving SNAP benefits. And it's okay. What I've found is that working in different shelters, domestic violence shelters, family shelters, some of the women, and it was mostly women, sad to say that when men were involved, in my experience, too often there were more problems than not. But so many women were amazing, amazing money managers, because it was out of necessity. It was knowing how to stretch a can of beans or food as far as possible to feed kids so that their kids would live to see another day, but also a better day than themselves. And I think also the misconception, I think too often with shelters, oh, well, they just made a lot of poor decisions. And that's, well, no, that's not true. So many people that I've worked with in shelters have college degrees, are well educated, and had a set of circumstances often beyond their own control. And yeah, I won't go too far down that path, but that's something that really is important, because I think that we see even in media that there's haves and have-nots, and the people who don't have are because of their own doing and decisions. And it's not necessarily true. Is it true sometimes? Of course. But the same is true for someone who has a 6 or 7 figure income. Many poor decisions just means that the debt has more zeros at the end of it. The financial anxiety is not any less. So thinking about the executives wrestling with wealth guilt or different clients who face eviction and trying to get by, it really is important. The tools might be different, but some of the same core, essential financial well-being fundamentals are true across the board. And it's interesting even to think about the different range of income. There's a paper that was written studying people with six-figure plus salaries, and it's called A Wealthy Hand to Mouth. And it shows that a substantial number of what this paper calls wealthy individuals making six figures or more still live check to check.
Yes.
And still struggle to make the ends meet and pay bills. And people think in their minds about particular professions, like, if I just do this, and delaying living life for today for some time in the future of when I get this, when I do that, when this comes my way, when my luck finally comes and my opportunity arrives, that, well, who knows? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. We can live our best today. We can make a plan for tomorrow, but we also need to adjust and be ready to adjust. So I know that there was a lot, but thinking about different strategies, really across the board, the tools might be different, but that financial anxiety is real. It affects the bottom line in businesses in every industry. And I'll speak specifically to the United States. That's my expertise, but it's certainly around the world. Financial systems, economic systems, and this is also the importance of cultural proficiency even within the workforce, because how money is managed in different areas of the world is much different. In the US, we have things like NCUA, FDIC. Our deposits are insured, and ever since they've been instituted, not a single depositor has lost their insured money. In other countries, that's not the case. And people immigrate from a country who might have a corrupt government who steals deposits. Well, there's a reason why trust is lacking with our financial institutions and economic system in the US. And I know you mentioned Ubuntu. One of the things that I thought about, like susus, are an example of different sort of saving and helping each other elevate out of our financial situation to improve as a community. For those who are like, what is he talking about? Like, what's this? Yeah. They're like, I'm lost. Well, so a susu is essentially where a community comes together, and we can just use a number, 10 people in a community, say, let's figure out how we can lend into our central pot. It's kind of like creating a mini bank per se. Muhammad Yunus is one person who has been known worldwide for even micro lending and things like that. But Susu is different than micro lending because it doesn't rely on outside funds, but it relies on neighbors coming together to help each other improve their lives, their families, and the neighborhood. So they're in it together as they work towards saving, towards building different assets, growing a business. Maybe it's getting a different sheep to be able to spin yarn to create cloth that could be sold at a market. And a second sheep could help to double profits if there's only one. And that's huge. That's substantial, right? So that concept is important around the world. In the US, it's different, because there's many listeners that are like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. He just went off the rails. I don't, is he even, I thought we were talking about money or something. But it is very much that cultural competency is important, because the middle, I mentioned the 3 sections of the book, the first being our financial environment. The middle section is all about behavioral psychology, why we do what we do. It gets into traumas, addictions. It gets into values and beliefs.
Right.
And our system of values and beliefs are very different. And that really is important, because whether someone's an executive at company A or an executive at company B, they have very different values, both corporately, but also personally. And it's so different across the board. And that's part of what makes life beautiful. I mean, my wife and I are so different in so many ways. And together we are stronger as a couple. In different areas of our life. But when it comes to managing money, I've helped lots of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people create budgets. And we can come together, and we have. And even before we were married, we looked at each other's credit reports, laid everything on the table, created a combined budget to figure out our savings goals, all of that stuff. But when it comes to implementing and following through and the discipline and not compulsively buying stuff,
Right.
I'm the spender in our relationship. She's the
Okay.
saver. So there's
Okay.
ways where my scarcity mindset that carries over from traumas of homelessness still affects us. It's
Right.
Amazon Prime Day, this is not an advertisement, sorry, but certain platforms out there have a specific day where you can buy cheaper stuff.
Yeah.
And I look at it and say, wow, $10 pair of shorts. She's like, that's the ugliest pair of shorts. Like, because there's so many times where I look at the price and I want the cheaper one. And she's like,
Right.
you're crazy, because then it falls apart. Like
Right.
after
Doesn't
5
last.
wears, you still
Yes.
need another pair. It ends up being more expensive anyway. So in so many ways, she brings practicality. She's a
Right.
biochemist. So
Right.
she brings science to almost everything that she does,
Everything.
which I need, because
Right.
I'm a talker, and listeners are like, yeah, we know. She asked a simple question like 10 minutes ago. But our different strengths and weaknesses
Mhm.
are important, one, to acknowledge, but also learn and understand really a culture of curiosity. And I think that applies in the home. It also applies in the workforce, to be curious enough to know, well, what is it that our employees truly are wrestling with? Because what they're wrestling with at home carries into the workplace.
The work life.
So with financial anxiety, I mentioned that $47 billion weekly number. It's estimated that employees spend about 20% of their time with financial anxiety, making calls, paying bills, trying to figure out their lives while at
Right.
work.
Right.
That equates to an entire day per week of lost productivity. And it's
Very
real.
true.
And that doesn't
Right.
mean you just go and fire everybody with anxiety. It
Right.
just means that having both compassion and empathy, but also curiosity to learn and understand, well, what is it that we can strengthen our employee base, which also therefore in turn strengthens productivity in the bottom line of the business. They go hand in hand.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Permit me for me to ask this. What is one suggestion that you could offer to employers to sort of mitigate this risk?
I think that, some of the risk is economic. So it's broad. So when we talk about inflation, when we talk about rising costs, things like that, leaders are also stressed. Looking at, import taxes coming around the corner.
Yes.
So there's like that impacts pretty much everybody. And it doesn't necessarily, like, the burden's not necessarily to the originating country who's exporting goods and services. So I say that because, one, it really starts with just a sober assessment. When we start to feel anxious and worried and rush to meet quarterly projections, we don't always make the most rational decisions, both
Very
in
true.
business as well as our personal lives. And I think that's really important, because to take a breath, take a beat, and not stress out about the sky falling is really important. Because it's emotional. There's so many decisions throughout life that I've made out of rash emotion. And I'm not saying take like weeks and months. I'm saying take a moment, right? To be slow to anger, quick to listen. Sometimes we just get angry at all these circumstances that are beyond our control and stop listening to others around us. And maybe it's getting input from other businesses, peers in the workplace. For executives, places like Vistage is amazing in getting some of that peer mentoring. In the business as well, listening to employees and learning, well, what are the needs really? It's not always an extra pizza party. It's not always just, and I mean, you laugh like it's with recognition that you've
Right.
seen that before,
Yes.
because almost every company does it. I've been
Yeah.
at many. I've had the idea with my employees before to say, well, let's go get lunch, and sandwiches are on me.
Right.
Well, that doesn't change all the stress.
Right.
It's a sandwich, but they're still sitting there eating that sandwich or pizza thinking, well, how am I going to pay my bills?
Right.
Right. So I think it's really thinking about what really helps employees, strengthen employees and the bottom line of the business. So that doesn't necessarily mean a bigger paycheck. I mentioned that six-figure hand-to-mouth, that wealthy hand-to-mouth paper. Many people with bigger paychecks just get into bigger debt, bigger trouble, and their financial anxiety balloons over time. I mean, the most credit card debt I've counseled somebody with was 500 grand. And it was many have six-figure credit card debts. That's on top of student debt, car loan, other securitized loans, and the like. So sometimes maybe it's looking at benefits packages and thinking a small tweak where if there's a young workforce base, and obviously we have younger and younger workforce bases as boomers are retiring and millennials now are getting old. Don't come at me. Don't come at me.
We're not ready yet.
Well, but we have a younger workforce that's trying to come up in our future generations of leaders. So sometimes even instead of a 401k match, maybe it's a match to help pay student debt. It's the same amount of money. It's the same pot. And there's companies out there that have modeled that. It's not my original idea. So it's been proven to work. But sometimes it's just rethinking the resources that we have to really benefit, again, the employee base as well as the organization.
Fantastic, Matt. I think I support, as an HR person, I completely support the suggestions that you're making, especially for young professionals with the amount of debt that we may be carrying. Let me ask you a question. What trends do you see emerging in the financial wellness over the space of 5 to 10 years?
I think cultural competency is one for sure. Historically, for anybody that's ever looked at financial education materials for financial literacy, and the government has spent countless millions and millions over decades. It's not one particular cabinet or another or presidency or another. But a lot of money has been spent to produce some of the same stuff over and over, by and large. So cultural competency, I mentioned the importance of values and belief systems. That's important. So when we think about one specific example, something like remittances. Remittances are where someone who's working here is sending money somewhere else to help their families survive. And this is not a political conversation. It is a very real conversation.
It is.
It happens, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We live in a world. We don't live just in one small bubble. And anybody can budget in a bubble, but we don't live in a bubble, right? The boundaries of e-commerce have ballooned globally. And that's important because our well-being relies on that. I mean, certain people who might be president at the moment has a lot of manufacturing for his own companies done in China. I mean, so like I said, this isn't about politics. Sorry. Take a step back. Remittances are huge. They're important. So if someone just says, and I mentioned the importance of flexibility with different financial tools, someone just says, well, cut this out of your budget, then you'll be okay.
Right.
Well, it's not always that simple. It might mean that somebody starves or goes hungry because that remittance is not sent. And it gets into as well value, personal value, our intrinsic value and self-worth. When we don't value ourselves, there's not always the best decisions that are made for our futures.
Very true.
It's a matter of survival and moving through survival. And sometimes it's living in scarcity and moving ultimately from scarcity to abundance. It's a mindset shift, not necessarily a giant pot of money. And I think that's important because I've spoken with so many people who just believe if I just had more money or just these, then I'll be happy.
Right.
And I have a 15-year-old and he's constantly thinking about when I do this, then I'll be happy. Well, dude, you're 15. Enjoy it now. Yeah.
You don't want to start paying bills.
True. It's true.
It's not that fun at all.
Yeah. Adulting is rough. It's rough.
Very, very, very.
But at the same time, it can be fulfilling. And that's about
Yeah.
living a life of purpose, because it's not just about the most money. And I think your question is an important one about where is it the financial well-being goes in the future. And I think even just the statement financial well-being, we'll use different terms and I define them in the book. And the third section is nuts and bolts. So understanding money management, things like that, estates, wills, as well as understanding credit reporting, scoring. But different terms are used interchangeably. So
Mhm.
financial literacy versus financial education versus financial well-being, and there's others as well, but we'll limit it to those three for the time being. So financial literacy, and we can think about literacy in the broad sense. Well, literacy is the ability to obtain information, take in that information, and have knowledge. Well, for listeners, there's probably lots of people that we know, and maybe ourselves. I know me for sure has been true. We can read a lot, learn a lot, and not necessarily implement it. And then
Implementation.
start to struggle and wonder, well, why isn't this just happening in my life? Like, I learned it, I read these books, I took these courses, and well, we need to implement. So lack of implementation is a problem for many, including, like I said, myself. So financial literacy alone doesn't necessarily change, but it is also important. So financial education is the input that can lead to financial literacy and increased understanding. We have what I'll call an epidemic of financial literacy in the US.
Yes.
Many are unable to understand basic concepts of inflation
Right.
or interest or things like that. We hear about it in the news. And I think the flip side of the coin of lack of financial literacy is too much information, because everybody's trying to sell something else and sell this path to wealth and this freedom and financial independence and retire early and this and that. And fundamentally, we need to collectively understand the fundamentals. And from there, we can figure out some of our independent system of beliefs and values and learn and grow through that. And I think that financial well-being takes in the future, takes into all of those different things into account. I mean, there's a movement about minimalism that after a while, how much more do we really need?
Right.
Yale and other researchers have shown that after a certain level of income, we're no happier. Once we have our bills paid, when we can pay our rent and not worry where our next meal is going to come from, having lots more doesn't necessarily make us happier. So I think financial well-being tied to that whole health wealth idea is really important, because that's where families and people really live.
Very
We
true.
live figuring out, for my wife and I, we built an addition on our home about 15 years ago for her parents to move in.
Mhm.
And thinking about multi-generations, for anybody who has parents still living,
Right.
they're starting to get older.
They're aging.
They're aging. And with
Mhm.
aging comes health challenges.
Yes.
And while I was a patient of my own bile duct cancer, my father-in-law had lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
And we figured out as caregivers how to provide the best to him.
Right.
And it took sacrifice. But we knew that, we planned for that over 15 years ago, to think eventually he will need extra help. When he first moved in, he was still independent, capable, and they got around and did their own grocery shopping and the like. But this is the fruition of that planning, where he was able to find peace in his own home, where he had the most peace.
Rest.
So I think that that's really important, because financial well-being is more than just financial education or learning investments or figuring out long-term care planning, though it includes all of that.
Right.
It's also thinking about our environmental well-being, where we're going to live. It's thinking about having purpose in life so that mentally and emotionally, spiritually, we're fulfilled. And those different domains of well-being, too often in the US, we silo, we separate. We look at, okay, well, over here is financial health, and I'm just going to do everything. And for many, whether it's executives or not, I've done it myself, pour so many hours into work that
Right.
it leads to burnout. And that
Mhm.
burnout oftentimes leads to things like heart attack or stroke in the US. And it's very real. And heart attacks and strokes are very expensive.
Very.
So if we spend all of our time working and stressing out to try to get a bigger pile of cash, that takes a toll on our mental, spiritual, physical well being. So that is really important and part of what I wrote about in the book. But I think it's still developing as an idea and a concept, though people have been living it their whole lives.
Very true. Phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing, especially the stroke and all the other diseases that comes with
Mm,
burnout. So real, so
it
real.
is.
My neighbor I visited the other day had a stroke. And this man
Hmm.
was fully functional,
Hmm.
but we knew he was extremely stressed also as well.
Hmm.
So these are things that we see every single day. And I know sometimes taking just 15 minutes out of your day to walk is even difficult because you want to
Hmm.
finish that email, you want to finish that project.
Yeah.
So it's we need to think about wellness in a holistic way.
Yeah.
Matt, let me ask you about AI. With AI rapidly changing how we access information and manage our lives, how do you see influencing financial education and wellness, especially for young people starting out? Do you feel they're going to gravitate towards any technological advances versus human interaction for support?
Sure, they already have. I mean, on college campuses, the question is, what is higher ed even going to look like?
Right?
Because not just students, but professors, the ones teaching are relying on AI as well to produce, whether it's exams and questions and answers, all of the above. So it's real, it's here, it's in that sense not the future. I go back to a statement that I made earlier, the importance of tools being flexible. AI is a tool, and ultimately it's only as good, one, as the inputs. So if the inputs are horrible, then the output's going to be horrible as well and lead people down paths of stress and despair. And I think that I mentioned also, not I think that I mentioned, I definitely mentioned um, that we live in a world with kind of too much information in one sense.
Right.
So
Too
I think
much.
about, yeah, too much. So I think about like when you say younger people in financial education and learning, over the past several years, we've seen influencers on TikTok and other influencers have greater prominence than other companies. And
Yes.
companies, therefore, relying on influencers for their own advertising and user generated content and things like that. So technology has changed for, I mean, blockchain is another, it's not directly AI, but a different technology that's also not new. AI is not brand new. Blockchain is not new. Crypto and Bitcoin is newer, but even countries are adopting it. Different companies are starting to use it more because the some of the fundamental technology is different. Bitcoin may or may not exist in the future.
Yes.
Dogecoin may or may not exist in the future. We'll see. Who knows? But technology will continue to grow and change. And with things like blockchain, smart contracts, and different things like that, affecting a lot of different professions. AI is already just starting to really disrupt different
Hmm.
industries.
Hmm.
So I think as a published author, I've been knocked off even by AI on Amazon. And personally, I've taken it just as a compliment because it's
Yeah.
impossible. It's like playing the game. If anybody's gone to a carnival and remembers playing like whack-a-mole, that's
Yes.
kind of what it's like. I mean, as soon as you hit one, another one's going to pop up.
Yes.
And then as you hit that one, four more pop up. And then you can just start going crazy trying to chase those tickets.
Yes.
So I've looked at it as kind of a form of flattery. I'm like, hey, I mean, if someone put a little bit of energy and thought this is worth recreating and trying to get out there, so be it. My concern is that it's misinformation and twisted just enough that someone doesn't get the whole truth. So, how AI is being used now for sure is creating financial plans, and I've consulted it. I mean, even as we're creating, I mentioned my father in law, he passed away about 2 years ago. And for my mom, I'm the executor and trustee of her estate and helping her walk through that. However, I don't use AI in a bubble because not all information is accurate. And
Right.
it's not necessarily people talk about hallucinations and that word gets thrown around. Well, it's not just hallucinations. AI's data. I mean, it's ones and zeros, and it's all the output is only as good as the input. And ultimately, LLMs are really just relying on the body of information that's already out there and been fed to it. And what's fed to it, it depends on the specific model that's being used. And there's plenty of people who create their own proprietary bots and are using their own chat bots, and who knows what's been fed into it. So I say that because it's important. I think one, yes, it's technology, it's disruptive. I mean, the technology of trains were disruptive when they first emerged, and completely the whole industrial revolution in the United States completely changed our economic system. So certainly computers and the growth of computers and information change, applications, AI, all of that certainly will continue to revolutionize. What it looks like in 5 to 10 years is certainly more widespread use. I think for companies, there will be more policies put into place. I've seen some companies say, nope, lock it down. Nobody's ever going to use AI. Don't touch it. Don't sniff it. Don't smell it. Don't
Right.
come close. And there's others who are like, wait, what's AI?
Mhm.
And employees use it every day for everything that they do. Um, so it's there, it's out there. I think that it'll continue to expand in its use and hopefully also its relevancy. And when I say relevancy, because it's a tool and tools are only as good as the hands that wield it and create them. So it AI must be, and in the business place must be still human centered because it's there to assist us. It's there to aid us. They can be amazing for creative thoughts and different idea generation, but used exclusively alone, students fail out of school because they're, I mean, there's studies even looking at the lack of creativity and the diminished creativity as a result of AI usage. As people, as me, I'll talk about me and not other people, but for myself, too often I want the easy route. I want things to be simple. I want them to be quick. I don't want the 10-step plan. I want the now plan. I don't want to wait. I want instant gratification. And I know I'm not alone on that. It might look different for each person. I think that AI is an example of that. Not everybody, including me, wants to go through the 10 steps that it takes to, whether it's write a book. And I wrote this book with zero AI, kind of before AI sort of bloomed. I wrote it like from the hospital and launched it from a hospital bed.
Wow.
So I wasn't even like as clear on AI as like I've used it over the past couple of years. So yeah, it's a small question, but for a big issue. And AI exists, AI will exist, but having policies, procedures that create some different guardrails. I'm a board member for different organizations, and we've invested with one of them recently a lot of money, millions of dollars, towards creating agentic type of solutions
Okay.
because they certainly they can help. Being thoughtful so that it's still empathetic, so that it's still compassionate, that it's still, as I mentioned, human centered is critical.
Very true. Very true. Thank you so much, Matt, for chatting with us today. It's been a pleasure discussing your book, Financially Capable, a friendly guide to building whole health wealth. Has been amazing to really dive in a little bit more deeper your background from addiction to homelessness and cancer, and sharing some of your personal experiences that you have acquired over the years. I appreciate you being here and giving us some nuggets. Do you have any last minute words you'd like to offer our audience? How can they also reach out to you if they would like to learn more about the work you're doing?
Thanks. So my website is an easy point of contact, mattparadise.com. And I have different free resources both related to the book and in general. There's also my socials. I'm active on LinkedIn, but mapparadise.com can be a portal to all those different things. I think as a last thought, there's always hope. I know sometimes in business, we can stress and searching for hope and feeling frustrated and wanting the best for our employees and wanting the best for the business. And times are difficult. And similarly in the home, I mentioned different statistics with huge numbers. And we live in a world where I know I can become numb to huge numbers. $47 billion a week in lost productivity with financial anxiety. That's not just one or two people. That really is a massive, massive concern to many. And what that means practically in the home is many, many millions of people struggle to have enough food, struggle to pay utilities, struggle to get by. And there's always hope. No matter how deep and dark the days, there's always hope, and you don't have to do it alone.
Amazing. And you are a living testament of hope. So to me, I am so inspired by your story. I'm inspired from what you have learned, what you're sharing, and I'm definitely going to read the book to get more insights as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. For those listening, also, it's been a pleasure to have you. If you haven't subscribed to our channels, please make sure you do that. And until next time, bye bye, everyone.